So how I want to start is I'm going to put some examples of dashboards up here. And what I want you to do, I guess, give me a white if you like it, and flip it to the brown side if you don't. So this one right here, give me a white, and I'm going to call on you just so you know. All right. Okay, this fellow right here in the goatee. You're giving it a thumbs down. Mariana, give him the mic. And give me real quickly why you give that a thumbs down.
There's too much information, so it's pretty unclear what's going on there.
Okay, I would agree. One of the things that's interesting about this dashboard is, things are color-coded up top, and then they use the same color coding down below. And guess what? Those two things have nothing to do with each other. So it confuses the user. Right? So that's kind of a problem with that one. All right, how about this one? Let's see. The fellow in the blue striped shirt who's chomping on something. I love to ask questions of people as they take a bite. And, okay.
No, I think the same thing. There's just a lot of data on there. I can't read a lot of the, looks like maybe some dates in there. Just a lot of packed data on a sheet.
So what's your name?
Mark Van Beek.
Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Mark, this is one of my dashboards.
Okay.
So we're going to have a little chat. Just see me outside after we get done.
No problem.
No, I put this up as an example. I agree with you, actually. And actually, I did a redesign. I actually showed this one last year in my presentation with Rick. That's why I didn't call on you, man. You can't be my straight guy for this one. So actually, what's interesting is steam and temperature, the top two graphs actually correlate, but you can't tell because of the scale I used. It also looks like Bozo the Clown threw up on the page. There's colors everywhere, right? The other thing is there's some trends on the steam by year and temperature by year that I really would like to highlight to you. But what I ended up doing was doing some gray bar graphs and a red line to show the trend. All right? So I did a redesign on that one after I read one of the resources that I'm going to give you guys. So anyway, you're my new best friend. What about this one? Wow. Woo! That one was on Pi Square about 3 weeks ago. And one of the feedbacks is, hey, nice display. I'm not even going to call on anybody for this one. How about this one? Come on. Hey, come on. I need some responses here. All right, Dan.
I think it's the speedometer gauges at the top. The speedometer gauges are easy to understand. There's not an overuse of color. Mm-hmm. The graph along the bottom in the lower right, and then and then the bar chart above it seem to be correlated to each other, not knowing exactly what they are.
Right.
But so it seems fairly easy to use.
Yeah, I actually give this one a thumbs up as well. I called on him because he gave it a thumbs up. The only thing I might suggest is those bar graphs get a little bit busy down on the bottom because they're really small. I might do something different there, but I really like this one. Minimal use of color, all that. All right, how about this one? I promise this one's not mine. Smith, Rick Smith. I'm not going to pick on anybody else. Just Mark's my new best friend here. You might hear from me again though.
Well, this one, that has too much color. It's hard to tell what you're trying to focus this on or what message you're trying to give.
Yeah. So a couple other things. I got to study this one a little bit. So over here, you have frequency and ACE. Well, it's interesting. You have a trend of ACE, and it kind of obscures the number. You can't see it because of the number. Well, guess what? Then you have ACE and frequency over here. Why didn't you just put this graph underneath those two? Right? Why do I have to look, down here and I already have a trend? Why do I have the trend in two places? So anyway, I wanted to show some examples, and there's actually one other thing that I need to pick on this one, and that's color blindness. And this is something we're going to talk about a little bit. So sometimes your color palette, you look down here, and all of a sudden this stack bar chart, you'd think looks pretty good. Now it doesn't look so good. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So anyway, my name's Jim Gavigan. So for those of you that were here for Jim Gaffigan, because we have a pretty full room, he is in Abbotsford, British Columbia tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Okay, you missed by 922 miles in 28 hours. So you still have time to get there. So just public service announcement if anybody runs out of the back of the room. So I thought I would start off this presentation with a little bit of a story about me. I've got 2 stories for you guys. So about me, and I'm sorry for this cold, I really am. I've done a lot of reflection here recently on how in the world did I end up doing this whole data thing, right, and doing data analysis. And it really starts, I look back on my entire life. Like, I started out playing baseball as a young child, and I was fascinated with statistics, baseball statistics, right? I still remember this number, 548. That was my batting average as a 10-year-old, and I just remembered the other night who batted 591 ahead of me, and it was a guy named Tobin Smith. I actually couldn't even remember his name until like 2 nights ago. I was ironing. I'm like, Tobin Smith, wow. So, I guess, numbers started kind of clicking with me early on. I kept stats on golf when I played in high school. I kept stats on bowling when I was in college. I remember my first project, or one of my first projects with data, was I actually took data out of a Modicon PLC with a DDE driver called ModLink and put it in Excel, and I thought that was just magic, So really, I've worked with numbers and been fascinated by numbers my entire life. And so, it's kind of funny. You think about, well, how did I end up here? And I guess I kind of had a natural progression to it. So, but I will tell you this. I'm here as a guide, and as I showed, I'm going to show some of my own work that I'm going to poke a little fun at, right? I've been learning a lot over these last couple of years because I get paid to do this now, and if I put up stuff that nobody wants to look at, it doesn't look very well on my company, right? So I've really, had to study the subject and really try to learn. So I'm going to teach you some of the things that I've learned. Don't have time. You guys, you don't have enough time for me to pour all of that into you, but I'm going to try to pour some really important things. So what do I see? So I see a lot of retirements in manufacturing, especially pulp and paper industry. There's a lot of people not in pulp and paper in this room. We see a lot of retirements. We see a lot of new engineers, new operators coming into the fold. And what we see is these big, large displays with hundreds of numbers on them, right? Or we'll see what I call the Prego displays. If you guys remember that ad back in, I think it was the 70s and 80s for the Prego spaghetti sauce, somebody said, well, that's not Italian. And it's like, does it have oregano? It's in there. Does it have garlic? It's in there. Right? And that's what we have in our displays. Like, every number you could possibly ever want to know about the mill or about the machine is on the display, right? And I'll show you some examples. We see a lot of Excel hell. There's a lot of one-off solutions being developed, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe it's a young, smart engineer. You figure out they're smart. You promote them. Now all of a sudden, nobody knows what they did. Or somebody else figures out they're smart, and they get promoted outside your company. So, we see a lot of that. So what do we try to do? Well, we're trying to use a lot of the newer Pi tools, Asset Framework, Analytics, Event Frames, Pi Vision, the Integrator for Business Analytics. We try to use good design principles, summarize things, and then drill down into steady more detail if you're the engineer who needs to know everything, all right? We try to use multi-states very smartly, okay? We also like BI tools. I'm a big fan. We use Power BI and Tableau mostly. We love them both. We think they're the bomb. And what we really think is, it gives our users faster analysis, quicker actions being taken, and things that are actually reusable and scalable. So some of these just, no. Right? So the great thing about this slide is I didn't even have to blur anything because you can't see it. So there's actually, if I remember, I think there's 537 Pi tags on the screen. So here's what I like. It started off pretty good. At least everything's kind of in boxes and organized. I don't really like the red because red usually means bad. But, then all of a sudden we threw in the random drawing down here. Oh, we got to throw some trends up. Oh, and then we got some random numbers that just kind of float out here in the middle of nowhere. Like, what in the world? So, okay, I'm an operator who's a 2-year machine tender. Bless you. I have 537 numbers I have to remember, is it good for this grade? I'm running 20 different grades. Oh, and I have to remember the control limits, specification limits. Okay, that's, many thousands more numbers I have to remember. It's not possible, right? So let's get away from that. No. So it's funny, I showed this to someone in the audience, and I was like, does this look familiar? And he did this to me, right? And the guy, I know the guy that manages this page, and he said, yeah, I'm actually threatening to sell real estate on it. And, you know, it's one of those things, there's just everything is there, right? And it's everything about the mill, and it's all different kinds of ways. Things aren't always lined up, and there's all kinds of ideas running around on this page, right? So if I'm the mill manager in the morning and I want to see how my mill's doing, I've got to process all of that, right? I can't take a quick look like I can at my phone. You know, does somebody need me? Does something need my attention? I can't do that. I've got to go process everything. Mark, would you like to tear this one apart too? This is another one of mine. Are you sure? No, I'm kidding. I'm going to pick on you. I'm just telling you. I'm warning you. So this is one I did. I just got too cute. It started out good, right? I put some things up here in the top left that I thought that are actually very important. But then I got cute with the color scheme. You know, I was like, well, if it's good, it's green. If it's above the specification limit, it's yellow. If it's above the control limit, it's red. And then if I go below, it'd be cyan or a light blue. And then below, you know, the control or the control limit, it would be dark blue. And then if I don't have any limits established, or if I have a bad sensor reading, it'll be purple. Again, we have the bozo the clown effect, right? So it doesn't work. This is one I actually presented on last year, and I figured I'd show you the conclusion of how this ended up. So this is 125 numbers in a recipe tracking screen. Again, you're a 2-year machine tender. I have 125 numbers, say 10, 15, 20 grades. I've got to remember all the limits. You know, is anything good? I don't know. So what we think is better is if we sum the data. So this is all 125 of those summed up in about 12 categories, I think, if I remember right. And the top numbers represent how many of those are within limits since I started this reel and since I started this grade. How many of them in each category on the last sensor reading were within limits? How, you know, and then I can multi-state, you know, since I started this reel or this grade, you know, how am I doing? Then if I want to go look into something like, say, quality, then I can drill down into just those 10 or 15. And again, same kind of idea, current value since the reel start, since the grade started. And if I want even more detail to see how I'm trending, then we can do the trends. So we think this is better. I think there's, you know, more things that, you know, we can do. But there's actually one flaw that I would like to cover. What happens if I have someone who's colorblind? So this is 100% deuteranope color blindness. Protanope is not much better. And I don't know how many people are 100% colorblind, but I do this kind of for effect. And there's a statistic, so 8% of males are colorblind, 11% of Caucasian males are colorblind. Doesn't seem to be a female problem. I have not found the statistics. You know, it seems to be white males are prevalent. We still have a lot of white males in our control rooms. Fortunately, that's changing. You know, we are diversifying, and that's a good thing, right? But if you have a bunch of white dudes running around, there's a chance, 1 in 10 chance, you're gonna say, hey, when it goes red, do this. And they're gonna go, huh? You know, and what's funny, like, you know, I was watching the presentation yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago, the DCP midstream one, and it was green, amber, red. You throw that on that colorblind filter, you really can hardly tell the difference between the two, or the three. So, and I'll talk about some of the improvements that I think we've made in this regard, but it's just something you need to consider, right? Maybe choose a different color, you know, maybe not shade some things, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. So be strategic with color. So I did a quick promo video because I wanted to have a full room. So thank you all for coming. We have a full room. But I actually wore this shirt today. I said I was going to wear this shirt today for a reason. Well, what is that reason? Well, you know, Mark's probably going to come find me after the presentation. I'm not going to go find him. So we're going to be in the lobby in the Hilton, right? Down, you know, over there. Hundreds of people in there. You can see me from across the room. Jim, I didn't agree with what you said. Or, hey, you made a point that I want to talk about. I'm easy to find, right? Nobody else is wearing a hot pink shirt that I've seen today. Not a male, maybe. Well, I don't know. There was that guy down the street on Market, but no, I digress. So, I hadn't even planned that joke. But be strategic with color, because sometimes you can make something stick out like a sore thumb. Mark, want to tear this one apart? This is another one of mine. So, yeah, this actually wasn't the original color scheme. I couldn't remember what the original color scheme was. I'd already changed this, so I put it back to something about as nasty as I could think. Right? There's actually a story there that I really want to tell people. I was really excited when I showed this to the mill. You know, because I had done all these event frames. I had summed up 80,000 event frames on batch digesters and said, look, you have problems. Well, Jim, it's pretty. That was literally their response. I was kind of upset. I'm like, wow, like this is so awesome. Like I'm using BI with event frames. It's cool. But the problem is it didn't tell them a story. So what I did was I said, you know, if I change some of these colors and I just show the A cooks versus the held cooks, you can see a little bit more, right? Now, if I'm presenting this in a PowerPoint, I might add some arrows and say, look, on digester 1, your A cooks have gone from 22% down to 0. Your held cooks on digester 9 have gone from 50% to over 80 for 2 years in a row. You might have a pulp quality problem. All right, so again, just minor tweaks and changes can completely change the story. Okay, and as you notice, I'm not immune, right? I'm kind of sharing some things that I'm learning, right? We're not perfect. So this shows the potential of $1 million problem, potentially million, potentially maybe more than that. Obvious, right? All right, well, I mean, shoot, you got this red thing here, and you got, well, you can't see it, but those are red letters. It's obvious. Yeah, it's really not, right? And this was actually, you know, a really good attempt at some things that we ended up revising. So instead of, you know, having to interpret all of the squiggles on the line, the spaghetti graph, as I like to call those, right? We have a number. This is the % chance that this is going to happen. This was done with Pi Analytics. We actually tried some machine learning tools, and it didn't work for this particular problem. It was probably the tool and us a little bit. But, you know, we were able to do some Pi Analytics that now gives them, you know, this is exactly the same event at the same point in time, just about, I think, within about a minute, because I wanted to show you the contrast. But one thing you'll notice is I didn't do green, right? So what we've done is if everything's good, we just leave it alone. And then we can either, if they want a warning color, we'll use yellow, because you can definitely, even if you're colorblind, you can tell the difference between yellow and red. But a lot of times we just go no color or red. Because if you see something shaded, you know that that's a problem, and I need to take some action potentially. So, you know, some very like simple tricks can really make the difference in telling a story, right? But I'll tell you another interesting story. So talk to the operators. Guess what screen they were looking at when I went there last week? Hint. And I asked them why. They said, well, and you guys talked about it a little bit in the panel, you know, because you have to talk about change management. One of the things that they told me was, well, we only look at this white line, and now it's like really small, and then we only look at this other one, and they're very small. And we're not sure really where this number comes from, so we don't know if we trust it. So I walked them through that, and I said, hey, I'm going to stand all the way across the control room, and even if I don't know anything, I can look at that and say, you know, that's 97% chance that may be a problem. Right? And now anybody walking through the control room can see that. So if the operator on that side who knows that process intimately is on break, say he's grabbing lunch real quick, because this can happen in the matter of just a few minutes. Somebody can go grab them. Hey, we need to deal with this, because you have to take action very quickly. So, you know, it's very interesting sometimes, like even when we feel like we do really good work, sometimes people don't use it. You have to get the operator engagement. You have to get whoever's going to use it. You know, maybe it's a manager or something like that. We as engineers tend to be pretty malleable. You know, we can kind of figure it out. This one is one that I built, and I'm really proud of this one. But I'm actually going to talk about one thing that we typically try not to do these days. But again, we use big numbers right across the top. You know, this was a sheet break rethread on a paper machine. So we took a bunch of event frames and summed some things up. This donut chart, okay? I will tell you in more times than not, do not use donut or pie charts, There are, I think, some exceptions to that, you know, and I'll cover that here in just a minute. But the reason I left that on here is this is actually a slicer. So if you click on the green, all these numbers change to look at crew 1's numbers. So I just used that as a slicer. I just thought it was kind of cool that they could click on the donut chart and everything else would change. But, you know, to me, this was very simple. The key numbers were up top. They were big. They were very easy to read. And then the trends with the target line, you know, you could kind of understand it. I'd probably redesign a little bit. I'd probably do it on a black background and maybe some white lines or something like that. I'd have to play around with the colors, but this is not bad. So let's talk a little bit about pie and donuts. A lot of times it's very difficult to understand, especially if you have a lot of categories. Like if it's just 2 or 3 things, a pie and a donut can probably work okay, especially if there's a lot of disparity, like one thing's a big piece of the pie. But the problem is, and especially if you use 3D, it's really hard to tell the difference. By show of hands, this light blue to yellow, how many think there is a 5% out of the 100% that the pie chart is? How many think there's a 5% difference between the two? Okay, about 3 or 4. How many think they're exactly the same? There's a few, right? So it's really hard to interpret. Well, guess what? It's a 20% and an 18%. Just because we kind of flipped it a little, it's really hard to see. So the problem is I've got to give people numbers. You know, when we're trying to give something graphically and visually, as I heard earlier this morning, we're visual beasts, right? A lot of people are very visual. So this really is difficult to understand. So just say no to pie charts. Friends don't let friends use pie charts, right? And actually, like I said, if you have like 3, maybe 4 categories and there's some pretty big disparities and you can tell the difference, it's not a bad visual, right? So where I got that, you know, they've kind of softened their stance. And, you know, like I said, I think there's a time and a place. So one more final please no. So imagine this. This is a D-size drawing with a bunch of postage stamps on it. You have to zoom in, scroll around. Again, but I love this because I didn't have to blur anything out to protect customer information because you can't see it. Right? You know, and so just some of the things I love to point out. So you got trends with white backgrounds. You have trends with gray backgrounds. Somewhere in there's one with a black background. I think it's that one. So I have process graphics with kind of an orange color, a pink, a gray. So, I mean, I've got all kinds of elements going on here. Nothing's really cohesive, you know, and it's the entire plant. So please don't do this. And this was my favorite trend, the salute, the American flag trend, right? I actually did have to gray some of that stuff out. But, you know, what's funny, an engineer actually brought this to me. She says, I hate this thing. And the plant manager, I told the plant manager, yeah, we're going to redo this. He's like, yeah, I don't like that graphic. It's kind of funny. So, summary. So tell a story. You have to know what story you're trying to tell and who you're trying to tell it to. Manager needs to know something different than the operator versus the engineer, right? Tell a story. So I would summarize things and then drill down to get steadily more detail. Okay? I see you guys like typing really quickly. You can download this. I was told by Nick D'Orazio it'll be up by Friday. Watch for color blindness. Okay? 8% of males, 11% of Caucasian males are colorblind, so watch that. Big numbers at the top left of the screen. Why do you think top left works? Because in a lot of the Western cultures, we start reading at the top left of the screen and kind of zigzag our way down, right? So put the most important stuff. All things being equal, a person's eyes will go to the top left. Okay?
Does that change if you're designing for other cultures?
Probably. Yeah. I haven't studied it, but yes, probably. So, you know, that's definitely something I would do. I put the most important stuff top left, and you can use big numbers, right? All else being equal, that's where people are just going to go. Be very sparing and strategic with your use of color. Okay? Don't make it look like Bozo threw up. It's not an art contest. The goal is not to have someone say, gee, that's pretty. It's probably an insult, and you just don't realize it. Okay? No pie or donut charts. You know, try to avoid them, but sometimes they make sense. Now, Mariana, yeah, you handed out, there's a handout I gave you, or that Mariana gave you, and I'll let you guys take that. So this next quote is talking about accident investigation. So I'm going to pause for just a few minutes. Let you guys kind of browse that because you probably have not read it yet, and I'll go ahead and put it up. Oh, did you get your picture? Okay. Plus, I need a drink of water.
And we do have enough for everyone, so if anyone wants
Yep.
somebody, at the end, we can give you some more.
So one of the things I tried to just kind of highlight, you look at a lot of the displays I showed you, if the stuff is hitting the fan, and you have all these numbers on the screen, you have all this stuff blinking and going crazy, the operator may have a really hard time trying to figure out what you're trying to tell him or her and what to do next, right? So a lot of times there's a lot of irrelevant information, probably not of relevant information available to them in an industrial accident. That's what they have studied. So during the event, nothing may be obvious. So let's try to help out our operators and our people by simplifying some things and only, being very strategic at how we tell this story, okay? All right, some resources. You don't have to take pictures of that. These are hyperlinks, so when you download this presentation, you can go to those. Storytelling with Data is a great book. I actually talked about it last year when Rick and I presented. I've read some of these other ones, over the years. Interestingly enough, high-performance HMI graphics, we take a lot of our principles. My background's in controls. So, I actually use some of those principles. Probably not all of them, but I try to adopt some of them. All right, so about me. So you already know my life history, so I'm not going to go into some of that. And you can read. But, one thing I will tell you, if you like what I'm talking about, I actually started a YouTube channel earlier this year. I've gotten a lot of people that have said they actually watch it, which I'm thrilled and honored for. But if you like how I pontificate about this stuff and you want to argue with me, come do it. Just search my name. You'll find it after you get through all the Jim Gaffigan stuff. Sorry. But anyway, that's kind of who we are. I kind of am a data geek. I love this stuff. So now I'm going to give you a challenge before I turn it over to Rich. And Mark Jeffries, the guy that was a keynote, he did a thing to present for us, or gave us some advice on how to present. And he told me not to point. I may point at y'all. And I don't mean to be preachy, but I'm going to be preachy a little bit here. I'm just forewarning you. So one of the things, I've been coming to these for 7 years. My first day on the job at OSIsoft was flying out here to a user conference. And one thing is, I see a lot of the same faces year over year. And I watch the technology go really fast. And then I watch a lot of the presentations, and I'm like, the pace is not the same. So I think about that. Why is that? One, I have two theories. One, and I think it's a little combination of both. One is firefighting. There's a lot of firefighting going on. You're nodding your head. Tons of firefighting going on, right? And everybody picks the fire hose up. All right, problem happens. We got to get tons out the door. We got to make product, fire hose. And I don't care where you're at. There's a lot of reactionary stuff going on. So I think that's one thing. That's harder to control. Two, this is where I'm going to challenge all of you. How many people in this room have budget authority? Like, you can spend money in this area with your company. Okay, a few. How many influence? How many have no authority, you feel like? So there's a smattering of each, of all. Well, I'm going to challenge the people that feel like they're influencers or don't have any influence, more than probably the people who do have budget authority, but none of you are immune. And I'm going to tell you some of my personal story as well to hopefully motivate you a little bit. So what I will tell you is a lot of times what I see is people leave this conference or they come to the conference and they watch presentations. Hey, Rick, that was a good presentation. Hey, Sally, that was great. Thinking in their mind, I'm probably never going to get to do that. Or, man, I really want to do that. I'm going to do that. And then you get back to the plant, fire hose. 2 months later, it's gone. Inspiration's gone. The fire's gone. Here's what I'll challenge you on. And a lot of it once the fire hose gets picked up or you start thinking like, I'll never do that, it's because, well, I'm just the PI admin. I'm just the process engineer. I'm just fill in the blank with your title. And you think, I can't make a difference. Here's where I'll challenge you. A little story with me. See, I did the pointing thing. Mark, I'm sorry, wherever you're at. Don't watch this. So when I left OSI Soft and started back into the technical realm, because that's my background is technical stuff, I thought to myself, well, why would anybody listen to me? I was an account manager at OSI Soft. I was a salesperson. Why in the world would anybody listen to me about how to do this stuff? That was a thought running through my head. But the bigger driver for me was I would come talk to all of you as an account manager. So here's all the latest stuff we can do that the software can do. You're like, yeah, but I don't have the time or the resources to figure that out. Or I can't see how I can use that. And it used to drive me bonkers because I could visualize the solution. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And I was like, okay, well, they may tell me no. As a salesperson, I've done in my time in professional sales. You get told no a lot. A little story about being told no. My wife in 8th grade, I asked her to go steady with me. Guess what she said? No. 10-year reunion, I put a ring on that. Right? True story. Don't have time to tell you the rest of it, but it is a true story. So you can't give up when you get told no. I mean, because a lot of times, like, well, I'm the PI admin. You go in, you try to sell it to the mill manager. No. Okay. You can't do that. So then, when I started to think about starting Industrial Insight, and I'll tell you, it's the biggest risk I have ever taken in my life. I have everything I own wrapped up in this. You know what my retirement plan is if it doesn't work out? Hi, welcome to Walmart. I'm serious, like literally. And again, I had these thoughts running through my head. What if, now it's just me. What if people don't buy from me? What happens? So, again, I had a bigger driver. People needed help. I knew how to help, I felt like. I'm still learning, as you can see. But the drive to want to help people overrode the fear of me jumping out. So if I'm just the PI admin, and I have a really great idea that's going to save my company a lot of money, you owe it to your company to fight for it. To fight for it. My challenge to you, don't go back to your plants and do the same thing. Pick the fire hose up. Well, you can pick the fire hose up, but when you put it down, don't forget the fire. Don't forget the stuff you've seen here. Do something. I think it's that important. And here's what I kind of see. I've been in manufacturing a long time, and I see a lot of gray hair retiring, a lot of new people coming in. If we don't do this, stuff's going to run really poorly because we have not poured enough knowledge into a lot of our young people. We are really going to struggle if we don't get this stuff done, and soon. I heard a guy, I hadn't even thought about this until just now. I heard a guy, great analogy. He said, Jim, we need to do this before the emperor's got no clothes and he's half naked now. That's where we're at. So one thing I'll tell you is, if I can do it, and the fellow that's coming behind me has a very similar story. He was in a position where maybe he didn't, shouldn't have had influence, or not in a typical influential role, and he decided to make a change. He decided, I'm going to fight for it. And I'm going to let him come tell his story, and then I'll be back for questions. So, Rich Ermlick, please come tell your story. Thank you. Take it, bud. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, for that. I think my happiest thing I got out of that is when I go with my fiance now, and she's asking me to choose between salmon and coral. I can tell. Yeah, they're both pink to me, My color spectrum has 7 colors. That's it. Get the rainbow. So what goes out of the, that's very important what Jim's talking about. If you're delivering data to people, if you're delivering information and it's in a way that they can't digest it and better yet act on it, what good is it? And I'd like to take a step backward from that a little bit and talk about how we get the data up to that. How do we involve the operations? How do we involve the mechanical people? How do we involve the shop floor folks along with the IT, along with the OT, along with the finance? How do we cascade all of these different, call them KPIs, the key process indicators, together so that we can tell effective stories? And I know it's been a long day, at the end of a long day, but I know everybody in this room likes bullet points. So we have some bullet points for you. So we're going to talk about some stuff I did. We'll discuss numbers and stuff. We'll talk about some stories about some stuff about the stories, why this stuff matters, and then we'll have a quick activity and we'll build some of this stuff. And hopefully through that and through some reflection, you'll be able to go back and hopefully have a little bit different perspective and maybe just a few more thoughts on how to deliver the data that needs to be delivered. And then we'll get Jim back up and we'll answer questions and stuff. Sound like fun? So who the heck am I? My name is Rich Ermlick, and to Jim's point, yeah, it was a decision that had to be made 1,000 times. I gave up 900 times, but I kept at it. What I do now is the company that I'm working with right now, I'm in charge of continuous improvement, call it performance excellence, lean, Six Sigma, that kind of thing. I work with 14 manufacturing sites in 4 countries in the Western Hemisphere, along with our engineering wing, the sales department, and the financial functions in the home office and the leadership team. It's a good bit. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of data involved, and there's a whole lot of people involved too, because that's where the process is really at. A lot of what I do comes from my long experience as a musician. I've been a semi-professional musician for 30 years, got to open up for Dave Matthews a couple times. That was fun. And really, if we take a holistic look of everybody in the room gets to hear each other play and we all play the same song, it works. And that's kind of what you guys do with your IT solutions and the technology and the way you deliver information. And it's really a powerful thing. A year and a half ago, though, my job in one of those little factories was stacking pallets and pulling a wrench as an operator. I was covered in grease, bloody knuckles, the whole 9 yards. But I had gotten into this stuff. I gotten into the Six Sigma. I got into storytelling with data, and I started telling myself a different story. And that's really one of the points I think Jim highlighted very well. And what I'd like to just throw out there now, if you can go away with one thing, if you tell yourself a different story and you believe that story, then you're going to be able to make a change for yourself. You're going to be able to make a big change for the organization. You're going to believe different stories about how much value you can bring to the organization, and it can be a game changer, professionally, personally, spiritually, and all aspects of it. So enough about me. We're all numbers people. Everybody here loves numbers, right? You all love numbers? Geeks? Data? Yeah. All right, well, why do we love numbers so much? Do we have a reason? Is it cool? And I liked what Mr. Kennedy said yesterday. With this data and the numbers, they help tell stories. They help tell stories of what's going on, what could go on. Brian, I'll butcher his last name if I try to say it. He was talking about decision making, and that's what we use our numbers for. We compare, we contrast things, because you can't always have two things side by side. Which one's bigger, which one's smaller, what's going to take longer, which one's going to give me the most return on investment, how long is this going to last? How do I feel about these things? Numbers help us compare and contrast things, and they help us make decisions, and our job as people in this room in data systems is to help deliver the right numbers to the right people to make the right decisions. You already know this. I just like the slide with all the numbers on it. So how many of us in the room have a favorite number? You like them all. That's what I said the first time. But then a guy pushed me. He said, pick one. Oh, who has a favorite number, really? I can't call on you, Jim. So what's your favorite number and why?
19, it's my son's hockey player number.
19, it's his son's hockey player number. Who else? Yes, sir. 24, Jeff Gordon. Who else wants to share? I see some people dying to share. Yes, Mr. Daniel.
37. I don't think I have a good reason. It's just the number popped up a lot of times and kind of stuck in my brain.
Nice. I like it. My answer was yes, too. But I had to pick, so I picked 9. Goes back to my martial arts days. 10 was seen in Eastern thought as the number of perfection. So if you're working through the belt ranks and you get up to the black belt, you know, first degree, second degree, third degree, 10 is perfection. So guess what? You don't get there. People got to 9. That's as far as you could get as a human being, but you don't stop trying. You're still learning, you're still growing, you're progressing, and you're developing. And I thought that was cool. But then I made this slide deck, and I practiced the talk a few times, and I've changed it since then. We'll come to that in a minute. So here's a couple numbers, just real quick. Interesting. What is that? 115,200. That's the average number of human heartbeats in a day. Huh. 11. No guess? That's the most common lucky number. You're probably thinking 7 or 13 should be it, right? 7 or 13 are too popular now. Nobody likes it because everybody goes there. So how about this one? This one comes with a song. 525,600 minutes. Okay, I see a couple older folks. That's an old Broadway show called Rent. That's the number of seconds in a year. Pretty cool. This one got me. I like this one. 7,106. That's the number of living languages on planet Earth. 7,106. And you data guys can appreciate that's how many systems of click, whistles, you know, buzzes and hums and noises and squiggles on paper. That's how many different systems that we've developed to communicate with each other. That's not data analytics. That's languages. Freaky cool. And I know somebody in here is going to know this one. This is a hun with 100 zeros after it. Come on. It's a Google, yeah. I just, you know, I'd like to go home with like 10% of that. Okay, my new favorite number, 1. It's easy, right? No, 1, there's one of each of us. There's one of you and all of us individuals, one of everybody in the world. And we come together and we form teams, we form families. Our singular families form communities. These singular communities, we form a state. All of our individual states come together and form one country. All of our countries form, you know where I'm going with this, one planet. We have one sun, one moon. In the middle of one solar system with a bunch of other solar systems, we have one galaxy. With all of these other galaxies, we have one universe. That's like the ultimate equation there for life, isn't it? Just keep it simple. That's what I like. So the numbers we have in our lives, and that's kind of cool, but really, how are we going to make this a little bit more applicable? And I know you've probably picked up by now that this is going to be a little less technical. But I think you're going to like where we go with this thing. So how are numbers going to be a little bit more applicable in the decision making? So let me tee this up for you. You have, you know, how many of us live in separate states than our parents? You know, you visit them a couple times a year, things like that. Okay, so the situation is you are going to go visit the folks in July, but somebody says, hey, I got this condo on the beach for you, and you can have it for the week. Just show up and lock the door when you're done. What are you doing? It's April. You're putting sunscreen on already. You're at the beach, right? Well, 20. How can a number like 20 possibly make a difference? Okay, so average lifespan is 79. My parents both just turned 69 this year. And if you visit them twice a year, that gives you 20 more visits you can reasonably expect to have while they're alive. So, yes or no, if you had that number available to you and you were thinking about it, could you, or could it have a chance to influence your decision making? Yes or no? Would it cause you to look at different alternatives, to look at different ways of thinking about what's going to happen? Am I going to bring them along with me? Am I going to split the week? Am I going to make darn sure that I go in August to make up the time? Here's a neat, interesting exercise. Put your own age in there and think about how many times a year you spend with your kids. And I know that my kids are both in their mid-20s. I've already spent 99% of the time that I'm going to have with them has already been spent. Numbers can get heavy. My dad recently got a number from his doctor, 25%. That pulls things into clarity. And a lot of the times, the really important numbers in life and in our businesses, in our processes, we're not looking at the most important numbers. They might not be the easiest to get, but that doesn't mean they're any less important, and they can drive our decision points. With these numbers in front of us, and this is what we're providing to people out in the process, in the organization, people that are out there doing the work on the shop floor, doing the stuff, all the way up to the vice president in her office, reading the monthly and quarterly report. They're making decisions based on the kind of data that we deliver them. And I really liked what, I'm having a brain fart on the name now, but the gentleman that spoke up here before us, before the panel, he was talking about getting in operations involved a lot. Getting the operations involved, finding out what they need. They might not even know that a metric exists that they need. Has anybody in a paper mill ever said, oh, you just got to know. It's a gut feeling. I visited a paper mill once, and every single person I met, I'm like, yeah, what goes on here, and how do you know? You just got to know. I guarantee you they're looking at things. And if we can dig down and find the right things that they're looking for, and we'll talk about this a little bit more about leading metrics and things like that, if you can find the right data to give to them to make better decisions before the whole thing goes off the rails and you have a big mess, wow, you're a hero. So I took a little Jim's advice, and I went ahead and built a dashboard on how you can use this. It's got some colors, it's graphical, and it's very easy to understand, right? So you might want to take notes on this one. All right, everybody got it? All right, so, oh wait. I see a couple folks in the back like, huh? So let me decode this. This is how this benefits you guys. If you can effectively connect the people in the processes to information and data about the processes at the right time so that they know where they stand and they have a good idea of what's going on around them without giving them any confusion or too much brain stress, then you'll have a tighter, stronger network, your team will love you, and your boss will give you 2 enthusiastic thumbs up and hand you big bucks on a silver platter. And that's how that works. Right? Dashboards. So as my friend Mike Melvin says, who's an IT guy, it's easier to make better decisions when you have the right information. Wow. That's stunning, right? Okay, next slide. Here's the thing. You're football coaches. I'm going to just show you something real quick, little dashboard. And let's see if you can figure out in 5 seconds. Boom. Yeah. What I was going to do, and I forgot, was split the room in half, so you're the home team, you're the away team. But you can see, right off the bat, if you're familiar with the format at all, very soon, there's like a couple numbers on there. It's 10 minutes left to go, 28-23, the home team, you guys are ahead by a little bit, 3rd down to go. And what is your strategy going to be for the rest of the game if you're the home team? Yeah, you're going to kind of play it safe and just get that last one in there. And the away team, if all you got to, I know what you're thinking, right? You guys over here, you're thinking all we got to do is grab that ball, intercept it, and run it to the under end of the field. We get the touchdown, we make the points, and we win the game. So you're going to be a lot more aggressive in your strategy. You get that all in 5 seconds. Every 50,000 people in the stadium, they all understand exactly what's going to go on in the strategy. Pretty cool. Now, I know in our companies this doesn't happen, But in some places out in the world, we have this kind of a thing. Sometimes we do a little firefighting, you know. We grab the hose, we run out there, we be the heroes. You know, you put on the parachute, you jump out the plane, you do the stuff, you fix it, and how much fun is that over the long haul? How much money gets wasted? Kind of a lot. So I'd like to throw out now and get into the more practical part to line up with what Jim was talking about, dashboard displays, construction, and I'd like to throw just 3 considerations out there. One would be the categories of the information that we include in these dashboards, leading, lagging, and balancing metrics and how to use those appropriately for the different levels we're going to be building for, and the scope and the context based on who's going to be using these displays, these visual displays, these dashboards. And by the way, if you're telling a story about what's going on in the process, who's the hero of that story? This is the interactive part. So the hero, just yell it, just shout it out. So the hero is the person using the dashboard, right? And we want them to win. We want them to succeed. So I'm going to make somebody over here work a little bit. So categories of information, really big, broad buckets of categories. Mr. Daniel, could I ask you to scribe for me on the... Yeah.
Chart, yeah. And you can use some of the markers on the tables. Or
Yeah, there's
thank
one
you.
there. We're just going to make a short list, and this is going to help us in our activity. And thank you so much for letting me... Thanks for letting me put you on the spot without asking you first. No problem. So I'm going to throw the first one out because it's the most obvious, and you don't get any points for it. Production. Production's a good category that's on every single dashboard because it's the thing we want. How many pounds out the door, right? How much stuff did we make? Sometimes that's all people care about. Guy comes in the office, how much stuff did you make today? There we go. Have you ever seen that? Yeah. I've seen it. Remember, I'm in operations. I spent 25 years as an operator. I know that drama real well. Throw out some more categories of information that you think might be relevant, just in general, not industry specific, but safety. Thank you so much. Safety is always first. Consumption.
Raw material utilization. The other side of production.
Yeah, that would be like efficiency, cost. Yeah, raw material utilization. And we're just going to throw stuff at you so fast you can't write.
Environment, maintenance.
Yeah. So in my imagination, I thought I was going to have to pull a little harder and I'd have time for us to write this stuff down. You guys are awesome. Did we get it all? Quality, consumption.
You
I
got
think,
most of them.
I think environmental was on there too.
Yeah,
right?
somebody said environmental. Oh, finance.
And
That's
by the
another
way,
good one.
we got to thank Daniel for doing this because I'm lefty. And if I wrote it, I wouldn't even understand what I said. And I'd like to throw one more on there that might be a little bit finance. Yeah, definitely. Did that come from Mariana?
No, somebody in the back
Oh,
said
okay.
it.
Finance, yeah. That's one that I didn't even have. So how about task status? You can just throw that in the margin there. So the idea of maybe some text-based information that might be right now on a clipboard somewhere hanging on a wall with a little grease on it, and some thumbprints. For instance, if you're an operator running on a machine, okay, here's a little thing that I can expand down here. Here's a work order, an issue. Here's who put it in and what date that they reported it. Here's who's responsible to fix it, what date it's expected to be completed by, and here's the status. So if you're having an issue with your machine, how nice would it be to be able to know that, okay, the part's expected in 2 more days and they're going to do it at the next PM and it's going to be taken care of, rather than just being frustrated, frazzled, knowing that those guys in maintenance, they just don't listen to me. If they would fix the machine.
Yeah, we went through that. We went through that.
There's just a little bit of that. Yeah, so, a little bit of good communication. Metrics, and thank you very much. A hand for Mr. Daniel. So the kinds of metrics, leading, lagging, and balancing, and by the way, you guys know all this stuff, but this for the people outside the room that don't always use it. So lagging metrics is the easiest place to start. Why? What is a lagging metric? Yeah, it's the stuff that happened, but usually it's the goal, right? It's the target. It's what we really want. How many tons did you make today? Come on. And can he fix that number? I'm just yelling at him. He can't fix that number. It's happened in the past. But it's the goal. It's the target. And if we don't have goals, we're just going to go in and put our 8 hours in and go home. And that's cool. And I know places that do that. But leading metrics, on the other hand, what's a leading metric all about? This is, what's that?
Budget your forecasting number, what your goal is, your KPI.
Budgeting, forecasting, a KPI, KPI, key process indicator, so you're forecasting. Anybody else a thought?
Indicator of the future.
Indicator of the future, it's leading. Yeah, it's named appropriately. So there's two good qualities of a good, my opinion, a good usable leading metric. It's predictive, so if your leading metric moves, your lagging metric's going to move. If your leading metric goes down, lagging goes down. Or vice versa. You can have a leading metric that goes up and causes the lagging to go down. But it is tied and predictive. Some people are like, a leading metric is, if you're looking for how many tons you made in the month, well, how many did you make at 2 weeks? Maybe not, but we'll get in there. You can use it that way if you're looking at some material like quarterly reports, but I'm thinking operationally. The other thing about a leading metric, the second good quality, is that it's influenceable. And what do I mean by influenceable? We can influence it. We can get our hands on this thing. We can make it move. If you look at a metric like how many tons did you make the first half of the day, and we're predicting how much we're going to see the second half of the day, can I do anything about that? Can I directly influence that? Not really. So we want something that is truly predictive, and we want something that's influenceable that we can actually make a difference about. Example, America's favorite obsession for the last couple decades is weight loss, right? Weight loss. What is the lagging measure in weight loss? The weight, yeah, right? It's the scale. There it is. Whew. Right. But is that a very useful tool for me if I'm trying to lose weight? I go in the bathroom every day, and I just demoralize myself. Not very useful. So some leading metrics are things that are going to be predictive and influenceable. What are 2 leading indicators, leading metrics for weight loss? Calories in and... Yeah, what else? Calories burned, right. It's just the simple stuff. Calories ingested and calories burned, and we know they are predictive. If you don't change anything else, but you go for the salad instead of the lasagna, you might not be as happy, but you're going to lose weight. And if you eat the same and you start working out more and you go walking around the block and doing a run, you're going to lose weight. Pretty cool. Here's the bugger. And here's where you guys get hit with some of this stuff. How easy is it to get your hands on how many calories have you ingested today? Does anybody know? Too many.
More than I should.
I feel you, man. I'm right there. Yeah, you really don't know. You might have to do some digging and calculating and doing some stuff, but it's hard. So people just go, I don't worry about it. How many calories did you burn today? Not enough. Right, yeah, we're eating all this delicious food and sitting in meeting rooms. But I did take the stairs up and down to the 38th floor to my room. Yeah, I was feeling it for a little bit. That was nice. But what if you could actually get access to that number? What if they got the Weight Watchers, they got all the stuff that people do. You got PI systems. You've got massively powerful systems. If you work with the operators to find that gut feeling stuff that they work with, I bet you could find some leading indicators that they can use on the shop floor to say, hey, this is happening, so in another couple minutes, we're going to have a paper break. Would that be nice to avoid? Oh, yeah. Leading indicators. Great stuff. Now, balancing. Balancing indicators, what would that be? Balancing metrics. That's a metric that can stand on one foot. Thank you for that. That wasn't very funny. A balancing metric, and let's go back to our weight loss case. A balancing metric is, okay, has anybody ever seen somebody else do this where I'm going on a diet? And I'm just going to like have this salad while everybody else is in the Italian restaurant just devouring all the goodness. But you're like, I just don't feel good. I don't have as much energy as I used to. Or you get the other side where they don't really change their eating habits so much, but they go from sitting on the couch all night watching reruns of Game of Thrones with their arm down a bag of potato chips, and the next thing you know, they're going to the gym 5 times a week. And guess what they all say? Everybody says the same things. My energy's weird. I just don't feel good. My energy's low. So energy, how are you feeling today? 1 to 10. It can be that simple. That's a balancing metric. So if you change your diet, you change your exercise, but you also balance the metric of how much energy you have, then you're not crashing the whole system. You're going to make it sustainable. Classic case from industry, especially in the converting side, is a setup project. Anybody ever see a setup project where, okay, we have a 2-hour setup, and we were able to reduce that down to an hour and a half. We saved 30 minutes on each setup. We win, right? But all of a sudden, normally there's a setup, and then you have a little bit of a ramp up, and people would tinker and adjust it in, and then it takes off and makes product. Well, now we have our hour and a half setup, we save 30 minutes, and we lose about 3 hours trying to tinker with this machine to get it to run. But we won. And I've seen a lot of Six Sigma programs where they measure this, and they cram it down in there, but now we have a lot of fast, crappy setups. And does this ever happen in industry? Not in your companies, but does this ever happen? Have you seen it? Is this a true principle? Yes or no? Yeah, I'm like, ugh. I hear some painful yeses. We've seen this. A good balancing metric is go ahead of time. How much time did we lose coming out of a setup historically? Let's work on both of them so that we get faster and better quality. So that's the idea of the balancing metrics. The other consideration, the third consideration, would be the scope and the context of what this is for. And this is not anything new for anybody. The operator on the floor needs very different stuff than the vice president up in her office looking at a quarterly report, figuring out what's going on. I did hear somebody tell me this morning that, the information needs to be the same. And I like the concept behind that, but I can disagree on the delivery and the way the information is packaged. I like the fact that the information needs to be the same in that they're linked, right? You've got somebody, the VP up here in her office, you've got the general manager, you've got the plant manager, department heads, you've got the different machine centers, and we were talking about KPIs earlier, key process indicators, right? In my world, they call them cascading KPIs because they just right on down. So the stuff that's going to drive the business strategy, the stuff that's going to make the whole overall business work, they get, okay, this is what they need. Down to this level, okay, what are they going to need to know to hit that, to make it work? Down to this level, what are they going to need to know to make that work? And it's going to be more granular, and the closer you get to the machine shop, the closer you get to the shop floor, it's going to be more leading metrics, and it's going to be more granular. And then on back up, what goes up this way? We've got the metrics coming down to support, and on the way back up, you have help requests, you have things like the results. They've got to know the results. They've got to know, what's going on up here so that these people can send resources before something completely goes off the rails. Does everybody already does that, right? It's a beautiful thing when it happens. And the scope and the context is how you decide what they need at a granular level, what they need. And you can't do it in a vacuum. You have to involve the people. You have to involve the operators. You have to involve everybody that's involved. Cross-functional is even better. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to play with a little bit of the pencils and papers that we have on the table. Because we're in California and we like to use paper. So if we could, we've got a bunch And by the way, I should ask, because I've never actually went out and done the job of designing dashboards. But do you normally design dashboards on the computer? And you have all kind of metrics that you can just pull from? Let's try it different. Let's do it old school on a piece of paper first. Let's pretend that we're going to design one for a machine operator, and then we're going to design one for somebody, a regional VP or something like that. So play around with on a piece of paper. Consider what you want to give them in terms of production, safety, consumption,
quality, shipments, maintenance, environmental, and finance.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, the cool thing about this is this session is going to be more highly interactive. But the bad thing about this session, the bad news is it's going to be highly interactive. So go ahead and grab some pencils and papers and start thinking. And let's have a conversation about building something. What kind of information could you put on for safety? What kind of information could you include for quality?
Okay, how long are we giving them to do that? Like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's go with about 10 minutes.
Okay, so 10 minutes to think about all of them, or just one category? Can they pick?
Let's think about 10 minutes for the whole. I'm just going to keep talking while we build it,
Okay, all right,
if that's okay.
that's fine.
Because just why not, right? So start
And you all
designing
have
this.
notepads in front of you and,
Everybody's got
and
notepads.
pens.
So pretend that's a computer screen. And you could even start on page 1. Make a list. Make a list of the categories you think that this person needs. And pretend you have your team there. Work in teams. Talk in teams. What kind of categories of information do they need to make better decisions at their work sites? All right, I love the discussion going on. This is great. Getting the teams involved. So does anybody want to share what they got and how they came up with the placement and what they did? Care to share? Vernon? Yes, sir.
So one thing which I tried to do was use a little bit of what Jim was talking about. So on the top left of a percentage, which is basically saying how many of those areas are green right now versus red. So if it's a 75%, it means 2 areas are messed up. Underneath that, it lists all of those areas, and it'll either be gray if it's fine and turn red if it's an issue. And then on the side, it's all 8 areas with the key metrics. It's a bar graph. If that metric is in red, then dive deep and click onto it and see that area of the process. If it's gray, then don't worry about it.
Sweet. And what kind of categories and KPIs did you use? What kind of measures?
So I said for the mill manager, they'd probably want an overview at that level. If you have something like an operator, then it would be more focused on specific areas in the process. So for sheet mill, maybe basis weight, caliper, things like that.
Okay. So you made yours a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, just same template, but then depending on the operator, changes it around.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Anybody else got a burning desire? Yes, sir.
That's going to be an easy one. I've got nothing. I have the luxury of being in IT and having to manage all those things. And I've been in between the infightings of the upper managements and the middle managements. So upper managements are calling us to say, give me the numbers. We want to see the numbers. And we've got the mills manager that says, please don't give those numbers to the upper management. So how can I design communication tools when I know that they don't want to talk to each other, don't want to show the stupid numbers just because they lack the context of what's really happening, because they want one number to see everything, but when the number is not on the target, now they want to see everything. They just have to ask one question. It's why? And they're going to get the context. but I cannot draw something that's going to say why. That's my issue.
Yes. Thank you. You just really cut to the heart of a lot of this stuff, and that is the disconnection between the different levels of management, the disconnection between the different departments and the different business units. I feel your pain.
And don't get me started with bonuses associated to certain numbers.
You know what? Don't get me started with that. No, I agree, because if we're looking and we're chasing, just like the whole balancing metric idea, you're chasing one number. The guy gets paid for one number, and he's going to drive the rest of the plant into the ground to make that one number go up. And guess what? It works for like a quarter, but then you get into the next quarter, and guess what happens? You're screwed. I'm quoting this guy. You're screwed. You're done. And I agree. And how can you open up the conversations between these guys so that what they're seeing is a good reflection of what's happening, and how these folks, how can they have the security and the trust to be able to share what's going on so that they can say, we need some more resources, we have this situation developing. And that's a cultural issue. That's a deep cultural issue. And that's something that I feel very passionately about. And I don't want to say I love to take it on, because once I get in there, I'm all bruised and bladdered, and I've got lumps on my head and stuff. But that's a deep cultural thing. And thank you for bringing that up. Because, yeah, that's a 90-minute talk in and of itself. But that's exactly what something that our company, and Chuck's familiar with it, the Performance Excellence System, the one that I'm working in now, that's addressing that cultural issue, so that we open up the transparency, we open up so that the folks on the floor aren't afraid to say, hey, I've got a problem happening. Instead, what they say, hey, I got a problem happening, we need resources. And upper management goes, oh, okay, we'll give you some more resources. And I know that sounds like, kind of utopian, and I should be throwing flower petals on you. But that's the real nitty and gritty, and that's what drives this whole conversation that we're having right now. The underpinning of it is, how do we create the kind of connection and communication that people can have in different various business functions, so that we can make better decisions as a team that's going to benefit the company, that's going to benefit us all. And that's what it is. And if you could design a perfect communication tool, what kind of elements would you include in it?
I think I would include what they want to see, not what I want to show them.
Well, we don't have them here with us today, but yes.
Oh, but it's being recorded, so they'll know.
No, that's absolutely it. I mean, my background was 25 years as an operator. They came and they put what they called the plant floor production system in it. And it was this beautiful screen, and Chuck, don't tell anybody. So they put this stuff in, and it actually made our jobs harder. Like, we're looking at these numbers, and it didn't help us at all. Yet somehow the guy who did the project claimed a 5% improvement on the whole process, because he just figured it would. And boy, they saved a lot of money, right? But yeah, that's it. That's about getting the people together, getting the conversations to happen, and it's not easy. You got to kind of leather up and put the turtle shell on and just run in there, and you get beat up a little bit. But if you change, like Jim was talking about before, you change the story that you're telling yourself about how much value you can bring to the company and how much value you can create by being brave enough, and I'd say courageous enough, to start these conversations, because they're going to uncover some angst and frustration and whatnot. But if we can create these connections and we can start delivering the right data to the right people in the right way, I think we can actually make our businesses more sustainable, healthier, more profitable, and there's just much more to go around. And we have just tons of resources. I mean, the Pi data systems and all of the architectures that go in here and all the different IT tools that you have is just stunning, absolutely stunning. But I agree with this gentleman. It starts with the conversations, and it starts with getting these people aligned. And then you build out on top of that with all of the great resources that you have and all the technical expertise that absolutely dwarf anything that I think I have. You guys you have all of that. And I think if we go home and just consider that just a little bit more, as we're going back into the jobs, I think they could help a great deal, which brings me up to my last slide. What you do matters. The kind of information that you deliver to people is going to change the way they focus on things. The kind of information that they need to do their jobs, that's what they need. What kind of dashboards you develop and the way that they use the information, what you have them focus on is going to change the way they run the business. And the way that you tell the stories to yourself are going to change the way you run your life. So I thank you for all the involvement. I thank you for all the good feedback and all the energy in the room. Thank you for your time and attention. And I'd like to bring Mr. Jim back of Industrial Insight, and we can have some Q&A.
How'd you know my nickname? Actually, funny story. I used to call a friend of mine in high school, and if he wasn't there, I would say, "Hey, can you have him call him Jim? Can you have Dan call Jim back?" So they started calling me Jim back.
Jim back.
So that's what you just said.
Jim back. Me and Jim back on a stage.
Yeah. So.
Questions, comments?
So-
Somebody wants to share a little bit of the dashboard that you all created, or the KPIs that you picked?
Yeah.
We wowed them, Rich.
What questions or comments do you
wore them
have?
down. I think we just wore them down.
No. I see it. I see.
Who? Somebody? You also have the Slido option if you don't want to speak aloud.
No, we're good. We're all friends.
I have a question about, I guess, linking dashboards, hyperlink dashboards. What are your advice or feelings about those when pulling up different metrics through hyperlinks?
Yes, that's actually some of the things that we were doing there is hyperlink, between dashboards. Especially like PyVision, and we try to do as much as we can dynamically, build out the structure right so that those are dynamic. In the business intelligence tools, you can also do that a little bit. And, like both Power BI and Tableau actually have a storytelling kind of a mode. Like there is a story tab on Tableau. So I'm a big believer in it. I think you start simple, summarize a lot of things, and then drill down into steady more detail. That's my thought. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
And I want to say thank you too.